I think both men and women in different ways have been knocked out of their, masculinity and femininity respectively. And
Hmm.
not just knocked out of them, but also our society and culture is often trying to force them into the different frames, right? It's trying to force women into a masculine
Hmm.
framing and simultaneously trying to force men, young men in particular, into this feminine
Hmm.
framing. And then at the same time, as you've already talked about, you're knocking out the roots of everything that actually keeps people grounded and sane and feeling meaning and purpose, everything from the family unit to
Yeah.
religious roots to everything. And the results of this experiment, for the most part, do not seem to be positive. I mean, I've never heard more people in my life talking about depression and
Hmm.
anxiety and trauma and this and this. Like
Yeah.
everyone suddenly has some stuff, right? Like this sort of
Hmm.
emotional baggage in this directionlessness. And it's so interesting because I think that especially in the 90s, and I'd even say in the early thousands, I
Hmm.
assume this started earlier than that,
Hmm.
but I know from my own life that I remember, especially in that time frame, a lot of people had this idea. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of like the new atheist movement, right? Like
Hmm.
a lot of people had this idea that if we could just get people away from religion and God and superstitions and all that stuff, if we
Yeah.
can just get rid of that, then everyone's going to become these sort of enlightened, super rational, super logical,
Yeah.
very grounded, clear thinking people,
Hmm.
right? And I just see the opposite. I mean, look at the last 3 years that we've just lived through. I mean, people want to talk about science, like science went out the window.
Hmm.
It got replaced by the science, which, became the secular religion,
Hmm.
which people are now bowing down and worshiping, the gods of COVID or whatever,
Hmm.
doing their little rituals and bizarre, getting their fifth baptism at this point.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Who are wearing their magical talismans over their
Yeah.
face, to show fealty towards their cause and
Yeah.
everything, and casting out any heretic or
Yep.
blasphemer who dares say that, what they're. It's been real fascinating to me.
Right.
It's really interesting because it shows how. I mean, I believe that I've suspected this for a long time, but
Hmm.
I strongly now believe that human beings are inherently religious.
Right.
And you can, when I say religious, I don't mean that everyone follows a traditional religion, but what I mean is human beings are designed to, have this desire for everything from a sense of, community, meaning, purpose, a sense of morality, a sense of something metaphysical that's outside of just what we can see. It's
Hmm.
also why I kind of find it interesting where how so many people who would describe them, a lot of people who are atheistic,
Hmm.
how they still go on these searches for spirituality or they're
Right.
super interested in like psychedelics and trying to get in touch with
Mhm.
the soul. And I'm like, that's so fascinating to me, because
Yeah.
to me that's like you're still trying to find that thing, which
Yeah.
for someone with a more traditional religious worldview, you get that from your belief
Hmm.
in God and your faith in your religion. But it's like if you take that away, other people will find it in politics. People literally found it in the pandemic and the
Hmm.
everything
Hmm.
around it. Some people find it in hardcore feminism or
Yep.
hardcore other ideologies. Some people find it in hardcore veganism, and they
Yeah.
base their entire. It becomes a religion to them, right? It's not.
Right.
It's not just I eat a plant based diet. It's like no, this is like I've come across people who won't even talk to or associate with people
Hmm.
who eat meat or animal products, right? I mean,
Hmm.
like, wow, I'm like, you're more zealous than most religious people,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
if you came across a Muslim who won't even talk to or associate with non-Muslims, or you came across a Christian or a Jew who won't even associate with other people who don't share their beliefs, you'd be like, whoa, that person
Well,
is like
you would call them an
extreme.
extremist. You would call them an
Yeah.
extremist, and they would be ridiculed in society, right? We don't tolerate people who are extreme in their religious views, but we tolerate people and we actually encourage people to be extreme in these the views that are based around science. And you said something great. We're actually hardwired to worship something. And so when you take away God, when you take away religion, what you find is that people will just gravitate towards creating idols out of anything. And this has been happening for a very long time. For example, in every Abrahamic religion, it says Jesus came because people started to worship idols again, or that Prophet Muhammad came in Islam because people started to worship idols, and so we always had to course correct. I think that the thing is that we haven't had any course correction in a long time. Like we haven't had, on a large scale, a new religion come about that is focused on God alone, except science has become our religion. Science is that new religion where it's like, hey, no, worship this man-made religion, which is science, and we can change genders, we can create human beings now, we're working on cloning, we're just as good as God is, or even better, right? So I think what's happened is that we've become a very me-centered society. And what I mean by that is that we're very focused on us as human beings. What can we invent? What can we create? How can we overcome God? I think that's the focus of modern society. I actually want to read something, if you don't mind, from like this book that I love. This is A Man and His Symbols. This is the book by Carl Jung that I tell almost everybody to read, because he talks a lot about how reason and logic is actually our most tragic illusion. It's something that we rely so heavily on now because we want to believe only what the eye can see. So the reason why we're so focused on disproving God is because we can't see him. We can't see what he's done for the world, but we'd rather believe in science because we can actually see that with our eyes, right? We can see that, oh yeah, science can create these miracles, so let's believe in science instead of God. And so he says
go ahead, read it.
Yeah, so he says here, man is bound to follow the adventurous promptings of his scientific and inventive mind and to admire himself for his splendid achievements. At the same time, his genius shows the uncanny tendency to invent things that become more and more dangerous. So what he's saying here is that we love to create new things, we love to advance technologically, and we love to marvel at our own achievements, right? Like, who would have thought maybe 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, that we would be changing genders, that we would be able to perform surgery to change somebody's gender, right? But we look at ourselves like we've done something magnificent.
Can I jump in there and say,
Yeah.
change somebody's appearance? Because you can't change your gender.
Right. Yes, 100%. And then, but now think about it. We look at ourselves like we've done something great. Like we've overcome God. At the same time, what we've done is so dangerous to ourselves. Humankind is the only creation that will actually do something that harms itself, that will actually create things that destroy us and be proud of it. Right? So this is the gist of this book.
Yeah, that's such a great statement. Human beings I often say that humans are the best and worst things on the planet.
Right.
I love humanity. I love people. I literally would not be able to do what I do for a living, all the various aspects for it, if I didn't have a genuine, deep love and care for the human species. At the same time, I'm also very deeply aware of, both historically and in modern day times, how much awful stuff that humans have done to one another and continue to, and some of these ideas and just actions that people take. And it's fascinating. I guess this has been the battle from the beginning, right? For all of these thousands of years, is recognizing, the sort of virtues and flaws of our species and trying to navigate that. I mean, that's how, from philosophers to, priests and clerics and religious teachers, like it's really just like, okay, cool. How do we navigate? How do we actually navigate through this entire mess of the human experience? And I think something that's so important for people to understand, and I make this point all the time, which is that, You know, we are not different from our ancestors in terms of our biology, in terms of our emotions, our basic needs, all of that stuff. We're the same. You know, we're the same as our great grandparents, our great great grandparents. We haven't suddenly magically, you know, evolved a whole new way of
Right.
operating. The technology's changed, the tech's changed, and we have different, you know, we're at a different place in society and culture, but people are still prone to the same virtues and vices as ever before. How exactly that manifests and what it looks like is going to change. You know, people didn't have social media and the internet a century ago, but people still had everyone just had their stuff. And I think every generation we get new challenges. I think you're doing a fantastic job of recognizing some of the challenges of
Thank you.
yours and future generations, honestly, because it's real insight. The type of stuff you're
Yeah.
talking about, you know, especially in your 20s. I mean, it's real insight because so many people just wander around and they're just stuck in the matrix, if you want to call it that,
Right,
right? And
right. Yeah.
they're not thinking about, okay, what's going on? How are these things connected? Here's a great example, and I tweeted this. I tweeted something yesterday about how, because you know we always hear people talking about quote unquote
Right.
mental health, and I said you can't properly address mental health unless you're also going to address physical and spiritual
Right.
health.
I
Because these
saw
things
that.
are,
I saw that.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. These things are all connected. People want to silo everything off as if your brain and your nervous system are part of your body. You can't separate. There's no separation between these things, like the soul that's within you, however someone interprets that. It's all integrated. It's
Right.
not, oh, okay, my brain is over there and my body is over there. It's like, no, it's all together, which is why
Yeah.
when one suffers, other ones tend to. When
Yeah.
one improves, other ones tend to. Anyone who exercises, long term or short term, you know the change it has on your mind.
Yeah.
When you're in a bad place spiritually, when you're feeling totally disconnected from God and disconnected from nature and disconnected
Yeah.
from human consciousness, you know that has an effect on your mental health. That might actually make you less likely to want to eat the right foods or go to the gym. Similarly, you eat garbage, right? Eat a healthy meal and eat a garbage meal and do that consistently, and you'll see, okay, like the fuel you're putting into your body is changing everything from your mental to your physical performance. It's affecting your sleep. It's affecting your mood, all of these things. And yeah, I think that back in the day, people, I think even though they didn't have the science to kind of explain certain mechanisms, and there's certain things that obviously people got horribly, horribly wrong in like the
Right.
medical field, for example,
Right.
in terms of, right, where they just, oh, just let that person bleed. It'll fix every
Yep.
problem, right?